DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, actually, especially yourself. It's going to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one approach, one framework, one daily masterclass. This one right here that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, we're going to talk the importance of human capital. That's what we're talking about here today, the importance of human capital. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say human capital, that's all right. Actually, that's even better if you don't even know what the hell that means, because I'm going to explain what it means here today. You will understand exactly what it is, and you will understand how much of it you have, how much of it you need to get, and the value of having it, and how you can actually use your new knowledge of human capital to really assess the people around you and assess the situations that you're in, and maybe understand better why the situation is what the situation is. Now, have I sold you enough on listening to the rest of this episode? Good. Before we even get further into it, let me inform or remind you that I have a text line where I want you to send me a text and tell me the most valuable insight that you got from today's masterclass, or maybe if I just jogged your memory or something that you did know but you hadn't thought about in a while, or something that you know but you have not been utilizing. My number is 305-384-6894. Once again, 384-6894. Also at that text line, by the way, even if you can't think of anything from this particular episode that touched you, when you text me and you get on my text list, I send out daily motivation message to everybody on my text list. You can get that completely free of charge. All you have to do is just send me a text right now, just say hi, or you could text the number 3, just the number 3, nothing else, to that number, 305-384-6894. I'll send you a link to claim your free copy of my new book, The Third Day. Again, text the number 3, 305-384-6894. You will get a link to claim your free copy of my new book, The Third Day. And once you're on my text list, you can get my daily motivation text messages. All that said, let's talk about human capital. First of all, let's get a definition of what this phrase actually means. This comes from a website called Investopedia. Quote, human capital is an intangible asset or quality not listed on a company's balance sheet. It can be classified as the economic value of a worker's experience and skills. These include assets like education, training, intelligence, skills, health, and other things employers value, such as loyalty and punctuality. So, close quote. So before I talk more about what this the value of this definition, first of all, let me refer you to a few other episodes where I talked about soft skills, where I talked about the most important soft skills that you're going to need in business and in life. That was episode number 17, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. So we did a 4-part series on soft skills, 72, 73, 74, 75, 5-part series on soft skills. Again, that's episode 17, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. Those are linked down below in the show notes, and you should be able to find those in whatever app you listen to this on. They're definitely on SoundCloud. You can find every episode on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, depending on when you listen to this, you'll be able to find those. And you can always go to workonyourgamepodcast.com. That will have every episode in the history of the show, all grouped in the hundreds, and you can listen to any episode ever in the history of the show. Costs you absolutely nothing. Again, workonyourgamepodcast.com. Now, everything that we talked about in that soft skills series, that 5-part series, all of those are examples of human capital. What human capital is, if I was to put it into even more layman's terms than what I gave you in that definition, human capital are abilities that human beings have that are intangible. Intangible abilities, just as Investopedia said, intangible assets or qualities that don't get listed on a balance sheet. So if you were listing out all your assets, let's say you're talking to your accountant wants to know, all right, what property do you own? What businesses do you own? How much debt do you have? How much cash do you have on hand? How much credit can you get access to? Do you have anything else that is worth money that you could sell or that has a certain value to other people? Do you owe any money to anyone or anything that would need to be listed if we were just listing everything that you had, if we were just figuring out your total net worth or your business net worth? Those are the tangible assets. Human capital are your intangible assets. And understand that the intangible assets that you have are what you utilize to go and get the tangible assets. Since many of us many people in life, I wouldn't say us, but many people, period, don't quite value things that are intangible as much as we value things that are tangible. If you think of something like the right now, mental health is becoming much more talked about and much more accepted as a real need for human beings these days. But it's always going to be a challenge of mental health, because mental health is something that we can't see or touch. Whereas physical health, if someone breaks their leg or their arm is injured, or they get some kind of disease and they're in the hospital sick, we can look at them and see, okay, this person has some physical health needs. But if someone has some mental health needs, we look at them and they look pretty, quote unquote normal, but they do actually have a need there. It's the same thing when we talk about human capital versus tangible capital. If the person tells you, I have this car and I have this house and I have this business, and you can see the building right there, and I have this cash and they lay the money on the table, we can see it, we can touch it, we can feel it. But human capital, the assets that person utilized in order to acquire those things, we can't see them, but they are very much real, because that's how the tangible things actually occur. So this is the value of human capital and why it matters so much, because even if you don't have a lot of tangible capital right now, if you acquire and you build and create enough human capital, and that's another key of human capital, you can create it from nothing. You can create human capital just by associating with the right type of people, reading the right type of books, listening to the right materials, getting around people who have human capital. You can build and create your own human capital. And then with that capital, again, that's step one. The next step, you can start to create those tangible things. So if you want tangible things in your life, human capital is where it starts. And what you're going to learn today is that you probably already have a significant amount of human capital. Maybe you just didn't think of it that way. And maybe you're not utilizing it as much as you could actually be utilizing it. So my definition, again, of human capital are assets and attributes that are part of your being as a person, which I cover in the Mirror of Motivation. You can get the link to that right down below in the show notes to this episode. Assets and attributes that are part of your being that are intangible, but still valuable and tradable. In other words, you can exchange your human capital for money. When you know what human capital you have and you can identify where it is needed, you can exchange that capital for money. So you should listen very closely to everything I'm going to say here today, especially if you're interested in earning money. And I think everybody is. So let's get into it. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is the importance and value of human capital. Number one, human capital is how a community is built. Every community, every thriving community that you know about. And when I say community, I don't necessarily mean a neighborhood. When I say community, what I mean is anywhere where a group of people are working together on a common goal. This could be the NFL as a community. You got 30 football teams all putting on a football product. That is a community. A business is a community. A bunch of people who are working there, the local wing shop is a community. If that community is doing well and doing their thing, it's because of human capital. What's the human capital at the local pizza place? The human capital is, first of all, somebody had the idea of having a pizza place. Then you got the manager who keeps everything in order. You got the person who takes the phone orders. You got the person who knows how to make the pizza. You got the people who go and deliver it. You got the Uber Eats and the DoorDash who will let people order over the phone. You got the people who keep the place clean and make sure that the Board of Health doesn't shut it down due to a health inspection. All that is human capital. The skills that allow those things to run are human capital. Now, the physical shop, the pizza itself, the money, the ingredients, the cheese, the dough, those are tangible assets. The human capital are the skills that allow people to utilize the tangible assets. So every community is built on human capital. There's an episode I'm going to be doing soon on the law of association, which everybody has heard of, but I don't think everybody quite understands. In that episode, I'm going to talk about how you choose your associates based on their human capital. And if you really think about it, without me even explaining, without that episode even being done yet, you can really just think about this and you can get a pretty good idea. We all know the law of association is you become the average of the people you spend the most time with, right? No matter how many there are. You choose those people based on what? What human capital they have. Not necessarily what tangible capital they have. Maybe some of it is their tangible capital. Okay, this person got a nice car. This person lives in a nice house. This person has a beautiful family. Great. But how'd they get those things? Because of their human capital. All right, you see a guy who has a nice girl with him or a girl who has a really great guy with her, there has to be some human capital that goes with that, or at least hopefully there's some human capital that goes with that. Unless they're a trophy wife or a trophy husband, hopefully there's some human capital with it. Person is doing well in business, there has to be some human capital that goes with that. Whether they know the right people, they have certain skills, they have certain talents, there are just certain ideas that they've had that have popped off for them. There is human capital behind that. And this is why, as human beings, we often value people based on the tangible assets that we can see that they have or that we presume they have. But it's not the tangible assets that make us attract us to other people. It's the next step that we take unconsciously is that, okay, in order for this person to have these tangible assets, they must have these intangible traits, which is the human capital. We just make a presumption that because they have these tangible things, they must also have these intangible things. Because how else could they get those things? They must know how to do it. This person has this thing that looks like it costs a lot of money. That means this person must know how to make a lot of money. Otherwise, how could they get this thing that costs a lot of money? Now, sometimes that is a correct assumption. Sometimes it is not. And sometimes we never find out. But the point is, this is one of the things that we do as human beings unconsciously in valuing other people. And that's how the law of association factors in. You need people in order to build any type of successful community, however you define the word success. You need people around you who know what to do, where to begin, what steps to take, what mistakes to avoid, what voids to fill. None of these things require money. All of these are knowledge. All of this is information. All of these things are intangible. These are required in having the right associations of people. In order to do these, in order to know what do I need to do, where do I begin, what mistakes should I avoid, what things need to be done here that haven't been done yet, you got to know the right people. You got to have the right associations. Otherwise, you can't get these things done. Have any of you ever watched the TV show Shark Tank? On TV show Shark Tank, what happens? An entrepreneur who has some type of business or a business idea comes into the tank, and they present this business idea to 4 or 5 investors who have a lot of resources, i.e. money, to invest in this person's business. And a lot of times on Shark Tank, if you watch the show, you notice that the sharks it's not always about money. Usually the entrepreneur is offering, I'll give you 50% of my business for X number of dollars. They put the dollars up there and the percentages up there because it makes it easy for everybody to understand. But a lot of times the entrepreneur who's coming into the Shark Tank doesn't necessarily always need the money. It's not always about the money for the entrepreneur. Many times an entrepreneur comes into the Shark Tank and their business is doing well enough that if they never go on Shark Tank or the sharks just say, we're not interested, that person's not going to go out of business. All right, they will continue to make money and they'll continue to do what they do. And if they can't get money from one of these 5 sharks, they can go to a bank or they can go to someone else and they can get money from somewhere. All right, the Shark Tank is not their last possible option of getting money in many cases. Often what the entrepreneur who's coming into the Shark Tank is really looking for is the human capital they can get from one of those sharks, because they can get money from many sources. What they want is that shark's knowledge, their experience, their connections, the phone calls that shark can make that are going to get answered. Those are the things that the entrepreneurs are looking for. If I'm doing a business deal with Mark Cuban and I'm selling him a percentage of my business, it's not necessarily because Mark Cuban is the only person who can offer me $50,000 for half of my business. It's because Mark Cuban can make a phone call that's going to get answered that somebody at the bank, their call is not going to get answered, or my call is not going to get answered, or nobody's going to answer the phone when I call person X. But if Mark Cuban calls person X, they will answer. And if he's calling on my behalf, now I can get into a door that otherwise I would never get into if I didn't partner with Mark Cuban. So in order for me to get that call answered on my behalf, I got to sell Mark Cuban half of my business, not necessarily because I need the money. You understand what I'm saying? So Mark Cuban understands this. The sharks understand this. And what they're doing is they're selling their human capital. And money is just a way that we make it official. All right, well, make it official. I'll give you $100,000 for 10% of your business. But what you're really buying is not that you need $100,000 specifically from Damon John or from Kevin O'Leary or who's the other sharks, Barbara Corcoran or one of those people. It's not that you really need the money from that person or even that you need the money, period. It's that human capital. That's what makes the Shark Tank is that these people are so known. They have Rolodexes and they know things because of their experience and they know people and people know them. That's the main thing that is being sold. So the next time you watch a show like Shark Tank, and if you don't watch that show, I would suggest you start watching it. Even if you watch another show called The Prophet, CNBC has it often on their app. And that is, what's that guy's name? I forgot his name. but I'll think of it in a second. But the guy who runs the TV show The Prophet, it's the exact same concept, just done a different way. This man goes into someone's business and the business is having some trouble. He writes a check to help save their business if they're in dire financial straits, and then he helps reinvent the business in some way and helps them make money. But one of the main things that the Prophet does, his name is Marcus something. Now I got half of it. Now I'll get the other half in a second. But when the Prophet comes into that business, what he does is he utilizes his human capital. Okay, your business is not doing well because you got too many products. Your business is not doing well because you got a person who doesn't know how to manage is managing. Your business is not doing well because you got your supply chain is not working. You're paying too much for these products. You're paying too much for your ingredients to make your foods. So what we're going to do is get you better deals. We're going to cut better deals, or we need to get you a brand new storefront. It doesn't look good anymore, or your product alignment is not good and people don't even know what they're supposed to do when they come to your website. So what he does is utilize his knowledge, his human capital, to reinvent the business so that the business can start working the way that it needs to work. And that's what people are paying for when they sell him half of the business. Yes, they are paying even though he's the one cutting the check. If you understand what I'm saying, that is human capital, and this is how it can be leveraged. When you have certain knowledge, you can trade on it to other people, and you can get the things you want, they can get the things they want, and everybody is winning. So this is what the sharks are offering. This is what any kind of investor is offering many times. It's not just dollars and cents, but they're offering their knowledge. And this is why these people who are going on these shows, or you see them on these shows, even though it's TV, and we know it's dramatized for TV, assuming that these things are really happening, they're doing it because, listen, they can go to the bank and get X number of dollars. But the bank does not offer any human capital. All the bank is going to do is cut you a check. All right, the money's in your account. Go up. Go do whatever you're going to do. But if you want to actually have somebody who can get a phone call answer, who can get you into a room that you couldn't get into, who can get you a deal with Walmart or Target, and Walmart or Target wouldn't take your cold email, that's why you go to someone outside of just the bank. And this is why a show like Shark Tank even exists. Because, listen, anybody can get money from the bank. Well, not anybody, but you get what I'm saying. So this is the value of the human capital. Thought leaders, people who offer things like coaching, speaking, anyone who's an author, any of you who have any type of material, YouTubing, TikToking, podcasting, where you're offering people personal, professional development. What are you offering them? You're offering them their human capital. What I'm giving you right now or what I give you on this show all the time, all my material, is I'm offering you my human capital. These are things that I've learned, things that I understand. Sometimes I'm talking about a subject that you've heard of before, but I'm talking about it from an angle which you haven't thought of before. That's human capital. New ideas. Ideas are human capital. Associations are human capital. A different way of looking at something that is a familiar topic is human capital. So understand, just off this first point, you have a lot of human capital. The question is, how much are you leveraging it? As we move on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is the value and the use of human capital. Number 2, human capital creates the tangible capital that most of us chase. Most of the time when you ask someone, all right, what are you trying to do right now? Or someone says something like, I want to be successful. What does successful mean? Usually people define that through something that is tangible. I want to have a house, or I want to get my parents out the projects, or I want to get myself a nice car, or I want to make $1 million. These are the tangible things that people are going after. But the only way to acquire those tangible things is to have intangible assets. If you go back and listen to episode number 67 from way back in 2016, where I discussed the 4 intangible assets of life. And I got those directly from a book called Creating Wealth. That book is written by Robert G. Allen. And the 4 intangible assets are time, relationships, knowledge, and courage. Those are forms of intangible assets, and they are human capital. Time is human capital. You ever know somebody who has a lot of things they need to do, but they don't have too much time? All right, ask them if time, how much they would value an extra 2 hours a day. Time is capital. Relationships, knowing the right people. Like I just explained with Shark Tank, one of the main things those sharks are selling are their relationships. Knowledge, just knowing things that other people don't know. This is what thought leaders, authors, podcasters are selling. And courage, willingness to try something that other people aren't willing to try. What we just talked about yesterday when I mentioned Steve Jobs. Did he have courage to bet a whole lot of the success of his company on just a few products? And especially the phone, which is where Apple makes most of its money even to this very day. Those are all forms of human capital, folks. With these 4 things, you can get the other 4 things, which are the tangible forms of assets, which are, according to Robert G. Allen, steady income, cash, credit, and property. If you want to make more money in life, what you need to do is make yourself more valuable. How do you make yourself more valuable? By building human capital. When you make connections with other people who can help you get your things and your work seen by more of the right people, that is human capital. When you make the connection with the right person, that's human capital. For example, if I reach out to someone who has a big audience of, let's say, people who are interested in personal development, and I get that person to invite me to come on their show, and then I go on their show and I talk about my stuff, and I say, hey, I got this new book called The Third Day, and then a bunch of those people in that audience go and pre-order their copy of The Third Day, which you should have already done at thirddaybook.com. What did I do? I leveraged human capital in order to sell more copies of my book. Now, what human capital did I leverage? Human capital was the relationship. I built a relationship with a person who otherwise had no idea who the hell I was. My ability to build that relationship is human capital. My ability to sell myself to someone who has access to the people that I want to reach is human capital. So again, you have this ability. And if you don't have it, you can develop it. All you got to do is listen to somebody like me who will show you exactly how it's done. I got books on building people skills. I have books on conversation. I have the leadership bundle, 55 daily people skills, 25 reasons to quit worrying, and 25 conversation starters. If you didn't know, go to workonyourgame.com. You can get all three of those books together in the bundle. Nice package. We'll send it straight to your house. People who create tangible capital don't necessarily have to have a lot of human capital. They just have what they need and they know how to leverage it. When you make connections with other people, I talked about this in episode number 1835 when I talked about the Dream 100 strategy. This is creating that tangible capital through your human capital. But if you already have the tangible capital, let me back up here. You already have the tangible capital. Let's just say you have a lot of money. You don't necessarily have to have a lot of human capital because you already have the tangible capital already, right? And you can leverage that money to get the things that you need. You can leverage the money to get in front of someone's audience. So for example, let's say I don't want to take the time to build a relationship with someone who has an audience. I can still call them and say, look, I'll pay you $1,000 to interview me on your show. And they'll probably say yes, because they want the $1,000. So we don't have to build a relationship. I don't have to leverage my human capital. I utilize my tangible capital. But what if you don't have $1,000 to invest and get in front of an audience? Then you go the other way. All right, you're getting into the room, you're just going through a different door. All right, that person went through the door on the left, you're gonna go through the door on the right. Both of you are gonna end up in the room, you just got in there different ways. Okay, so understand something. If you read between the lines of what I'm saying here, I'm gonna read between the lines for you, is that do not ever look at a lack of tangible assets as a roadblock to getting to where you wanna go. All you need to do is look at it a different way. How can I leverage, when you don't have tangible capital, how can I leverage human capital to make the same outcome? That's just a question you want to start asking yourself. And notice that question starts with how. When you ask yourself a how question, you are challenging your brain to think. And when you challenge your brain to think, your brain will get used to thinking and that muscle will get stronger. But you have to keep using it on a consistent basis. For example, if someone's a really smart business investor, they can turn a little bit of money into a lot of money. And then they can leverage that money to work for them and make a lot more money. Now, the human capital is what? The knowledge that they have about how to invest. Now, the tangible capital started with just a little bit. They didn't have a ton of it, but because they have that knowledge, they can take the human capital, multiply it with the tangible capital, and if they have a significant amount of either one, then they can help each other grow. Does that make sense? You might want to rewind that whole second point, listen to it again. Point number 3, today's topic, once again, is the value and importance of human capital. Number 3, the tangible things come later, oftentimes. If you're starting at zero, let's just say your parents didn't leave you a whole lot of money and you're starting at zero and you're working your way up and you want to have tangible assets, you want to have tangible capital. Understand that tangible capital is the end product of having human capital and using it the right way. When you give tangible things to people who have very little human capital, what happens? If you don't know, let me just take you back to your algebra class. What happens when you multiply by 0? What's the outcome when you multiply any number by 0? The answer is 0. So if you give someone who has no human capital, someone who knows nothing about money and how to use it and how to keep it and how to multiply it, if you give that person a whole lot of money, what's going to happen to it? In the long run, they're going to end up with no money. Why? Because they have no human capital. They don't know what to do with the money. Therefore, a fool and his money are soon separated. Now, if you take a person who has a ton of human capital, though, it's a different equation, and you put them out into the world, they don't have any tangible assets. With their human capital, they can go and acquire them. The one thing that you don't want to be short of then is human capital. If you have human capital, you will always be able to create something for yourself. What is human capital? What are some examples of human capital? Discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. When you're willing to show up and work every day, you'll always be able to create something. When you have the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, you'll be able to create something for yourself. When you're mentally tough enough to keep working and putting yourself out there, even though things aren't working for you, you'll be able to do something. And when you have the initiative to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen, even if you start with zero, if you have those 4 assets, you will be able to create some tangible assets for yourself. Now, if you got a whole lot of tangible assets, but no discipline, no confidence, no mental toughness, and no initiative, you will soon have nothing. So human capital, therefore, is more valuable than tangible capital, because when you have human capital, you can go get tangible capital. When you have tangible capital but no human capital, you're going to lose it. But human capital but no tangible, you can go get it. That's why one is more valuable than the other, even though it'd be great to have both. So if you give tangible things to someone who doesn't know, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have anything up in between their ears to do with it, they'll blow it because they don't have the skill. That's why they say most people who win the lottery, big lottery winnings, they end up going broke again. And why is that? Is it because the money is bad luck? No. It's because the person who won that money, oftentimes those people don't have the human capital to know what to do with it in the first place. And here's the reason why that happens. Because you might be thinking, well, winning the lottery is like a random chance thing, right? So why is it that people who win the lottery end up blowing the money? Why? I was really thinking about that myself when I even thought about this for today's episode. Here's the reason. Because the chances of winning the lottery are very low to begin with. And I'm talking like big jackpots, like Powerball, stuff like that. The chances of winning the lottery are so low to begin with that people who have a lot of human capital, meaning people who have the knowledge, the skills, the intangible assets, they're not even playing the lottery in the first place. They never even go and buy a lottery ticket because it's a bad investment. My economics professor in college said the lottery is, quote, a tax on the stupid, close quote. Why did he say that? Because of the super low odds of you ever winning the lottery, that every dollar you spend on it, you're pretty much just giving that money away. It's your stupid tax that you're paying to whoever that money is going to. The point is, you don't chase tangible capital until you have acquired human capital. If you chase after tangible capital with no human capital, even if you catch the tangible capital, you will lose it because you don't know what to do with it. This is the whole point. People who play the lottery are people who are pretty low in human capital to begin with. That's why they're playing the lottery. They're trying to get rich without actually building anything and doing the work. So even if the few who win, they haven't built anything, guess what? They lose all the money. Why do some kids of rich parents, they get left a whole bunch of money, why do some of those kids blow the money? Because they don't do the work to develop the capital that their mother or their father left for them. It's why some people who are publicly noted for their money, a lot of them, I've heard these stories, they give more of that money away to charities and to other causes than they even give to their own kids. Why is that? And I've heard people say that. I heard Kevin O'Leary say it. I heard Warren Buffett say it. They want their kids to learn to build the human capital the same way that mommy or daddy had to build the human capital. If they know if they give it to their kids, then they're going to destroy their kids. They're actually going to create failure for their kids by not putting their kids in a position to build human capital the same way that they had to do it. They want to make their kids develop human capital because it is worth more than tangible capital. Now, have I stressed that enough here today? Let's recap today's class, which is the importance and the value of human capital, defined by Investopedia as an intangible asset or quality not listed on a company's balance sheet. It can be classified as the economic value of a worker's experience and skills. These include assets like education, training, intelligence, skills, health, and other things employers value, such as loyalty and punctuality. Close quote. If you see episodes 1772 through 76 on soft skills, those are examples of human capital. And my definition is assets and attributes that are part of your being, that are intangible, yet still valuable and tradable. In other words, you can exchange them for money. Number one, human capital is how a community is built. see my episode on the law of association. It didn't come out yet, but it will be coming out very soon. You need people who know what to do, where to go, what steps to take, what mistakes they shouldn't take, what is missing that needs to be done. None of those things require money. They require knowledge. They require insight. When you watch Shark Tank, a lot of times those sharks are not really selling their money because, listen, the entrepreneur can get money from a lot of different sources. Those people come on Shark Tank because they want the human capital of the sharks, i.e. their associations. That's the most valuable thing a lot of them are answering. They can get phone calls answered that other people can't. Thought leaders, people who offer coaching, speaking, who write books, they are selling human capital. They're selling their knowledge. Knowledge is human capital. Point number 2, human capital creates the tangible capital that most of us chase after. See episode number 67 where I talk the 4 intangible assets of life, and read the book called Creating Wealth by Robert G. Allen. The 4 intangible assets are time, relationships, knowledge, and courage. We talked about these all the time. Someone who doesn't have a lot of time but they're making money, ask them how much time is worth to them. People who have the right relationship, Shark Tank, like I just talked about. Thought leaders are selling knowledge. Look at someone like Steve Jobs. He had to have courage to bet on what he was doing with Apple in order to make Apple the company that it is. When you have intangible assets, you can get the 4 tangible assets, which are income, cash, credit, and property. If you want to make more money in life, make yourself a more valuable person. A smart investor, for example, can turn a little bit of money into a lot because they are multiplying that little bit of tangible asset with a whole lot of human capital. Point number 3, the tangible assets come later. When you give tangible things to a person with no human capital, it's like multiplying by 0. No matter how much they have, you're going to end up with 0 because they don't have the knowledge of what to do with it. The knowledge is much more valuable than the cars and the money and the sneakers. Why is this? Because when people who don't have human capital don't know what to do with their tangible things, they will eventually make a mistake and they will be separated from it by who? People who have human capital and know exactly what to do with it and how to get it out of other people. Think about why people who win the lottery often go broke all over again. The reason is, first of all, the type of people who play the lottery are people who don't have the human capital to understand how little the chances that they're actually going to win. People who are smart and have high levels of human capital don't play the lottery because they know it's a tax on the stupid, like my economics professor told me back in college. The point is, you don't chase tangible capital until you have built up some human capital, because if you get tangible without the human capital, you're going to end up losing it. Why do some kids of rich parents blow the money? Because they didn't have to build human capital in order to get it. This is why many people who are publicly noted for having a whole lot of wealth give a lot of it away rather than just allow their kids to inherit it. Because if their kids inherit it without building the human capital the same way that mom or dad had to build the human capital, they will actually be destroyed because they never had to build human capital, or at least they don't think they do, and that will actually make them worse than having no tangible capital. I'd rather have no tangible capital and a bunch of human capital than a bunch of tangible capital and no human capital, because then I'd end up losing it anyway, and then I also didn't have the impetus to go and work on my game and develop that human capital. That's the value of human capital. If you didn't know, now you know. Send me a text. Tell me the most valuable insight you got from today's masterclass. What are you going to do or think different based on what you heard here today, if anything? And if you want to get my daily motivation text, send me a text. Send the number 3 to 305-384-6894. That'll give you a link to get the 3rd day. Or just send me a text and you'll get on my list and you'll get my daily motivation. Again, 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.